Alright, so as you guys probably can guess, this is going to be a very detailed look at the Deflector shield. And in fact, this video is going to be covering so many things about the Deflector shield. I hope you don't skip through it and try to look for some specific thing, because I'm going to be covering a lot of things. Alright, so one of the most important things we're going to be looking at with the Deflector shield is just why it's good, but why it's so terrible for some people, right? What kind of builds you need to use to actually make it work well. Now, before I go over that stuff, there is something I need to discuss with the Artificer Hive, and that is skill refresh. I've seen a few comments, and I've definitely looked in a few past videos of other people explaining skill refresh as how often this actually works on the Artificer. It's not true. Skill refresh is basically just giving extra life or extra duration to skills that you already have deployed. So like a turret or a drone will be active longer when you have a higher skill refresh. It does not mean that you are going to be getting an Artificer tick, every 5 seconds or every 6 seconds. It doesn't mean that. Every Artificer tick is 10 seconds. Doesn't matter your skill tier. Just so we get that clear. Now, since we're on the topic of the Artificer Hive and skill builds, right, I do want to talk about the Deflector shield with the Artificer Hive and a skill build. Of course, this is something that is definitely frowned upon, especially in heroic or legendary content, because they're going to shoot past your shield and hit you in the armor, and it's going to be pretty much a disaster, right? At least elite enemies, especially the heavies, they're going to just decimate you. But skill damage and talents that boost skill damage, or just damage in general, can be very effective on a Deflector shield. Now, of course, it's dependent on what you're actually shooting at or what you're fighting, but it is nice to know that you can get a good amount of damage off of the deflected bullets by using this. And another thing you can actually see in this, I am using tier 6 shields, right? I'm using tier 6 Artificer, and that is all from skill tier. But if you actually look at the procs on my Artificer, you can see that roughly every 10 seconds, and I say roughly because there is travel time still, so it does have to shoot up into the air and then land on the actual shield, and this gives it about a second of travel time. So you can see occasionally where your buff for the Artificer ends, and then you can see your actual, the next little drone shoot up into the air and then reapply that buff. So it does have about a second gap, and generally that results in like an 11-second time between actual drones, but as a whole it's 10 seconds regardless of what you have. You're not adding extra time because you have extra skill tiers. Now, another thing that I figured people might ask about is with Heartbreaker, and does the deflected bullets add to your Heartbreaker stacks? Well, I mean, it's a pretty simple test, and the answer is no. Even if you are deflecting bullets back at a pulsed enemy, they're not going to build stacks, you're not going to get bonus armor from them, and it's not going to be very useful. Alright, now just comparing the shields in general, right? We've got the Bulwark, which is known as the big boy shield, right? This one has the highest amount of health, the biggest, active regen, and the most holstered regen. It also provides full body coverage, meaning any enemies that's directly in front of you is not going to be shooting you in the body. They're not going to be shooting you in the head. They're not going to be making contact with your armor. This is great. The only downside of this shield is that you are limited to the pistol. That's pretty much the trade-off, right? You have a full body shield, but you have a pistol. Now, of course, for some people that's not a problem. Some people absolutely hate the pistol and they don't want to use it, which is, of course, the reason why a lot of people use the Crusader shield. Now, obviously, the Crusader shield has the incredible benefit of being usable with ARs, SMGs, shotguns, or rifles. Of course, that allows you to use any exotic weapon that comes in those categories. Now, the downside of the Crusader shield is, of course, that it has the lowest health, the lowest regen, and it has a very small hitbox. You can still get hit in the head from certain enemies, mostly if they're just higher elevation, which is kind of the case with all shields. If they're on like a ledge right above you, yeah, they're going to be able to peg you in the head. It doesn't matter which shield you're using. If, they're a little bit further away from you, they're still not going to be able to go past the Bulwark, but if they're a little further away from you and above you with a Crusader shield, yeah, they're still going to be able to, hit you in the head, which kind of sucks. You're still going to be able to contain most of the damage from an enemy directly in front of you while you're using an AR with a Crusader, which is great. However, when we're talking about the Deflector shield, we get a bunch of problems. I mean, honestly, this thing is barely qualifying as a shield, to be honest with you. So what we're looking at here is generally the second strongest in terms of health and regen. We're looking at a shield that can actually gain from skill damage and some of these skill damage talents. But in return for that, what it's costing us is we have to use a pistol again, just like the Bulwark. And it also has the smallest hitbox, providing us the least amount of protection. And this is the number one reason why a lot of people don't like using it, because enemies, especially heavies and elites, can shoot over the shield and still deal damage directly to your armor, basically negating a lot of the defensive properties of this shield. And as we're going to get into, because of this, there's only going to be a very small handful of builds that can properly use the Deflector shield. And that's really why I don't like it so much. That's why I don't really use it in builds so much, because the other shields have a lot more build diversity to them, making them much more fun, making them much more unique and exciting than the Deflector, right? The Deflector is kind of like a two-trick pony, if you will, and that kind of sucks. But what we can see here, right? Using my Fingerbreaker build, my Heartbreaker with 93R and the Bulwark shield, when you're fighting a heavy, this is pretty much what you're going to see. They can really not break down your shield. I mean, if you know how to build a Bulwark properly, it's, just a matter of time before they just drop, right? They're never going to be able to get through that shield if you know how to build it, and you're eventually going to do enough damage to them where they die. When you're looking at a Crusader build, obviously you're sacrificing shield health for just massive amounts of damage, right? The enemy can't really shoot over the shield, and you can burn them quick. Now, when you're looking at a Deflector, this is where a lot of that limitation comes in, because they can shoot over it. It doesn't freaking matter, right? It doesn't matter how tanky your shield is. They're going to be burning through your armor like crazy. And this kind of sucks. It makes it less fun to use it, and in some senses it just makes it boring, because you can't really play around with it. You have to have cookie cutter styles to make this shield work in a lot of content, right? Especially legendary, it's going to be very, very procedural almost. It's like you have to use this thing and you have to have this thing. That's basically what it's going to boil down to, and we'll get into exactly what that is right now. Alright, so like I said, cookie cutter. You're going to pretty much encounter the same exact 3 exotics. It's going to be Ridgeway's Pride. You're going to see the Memento, which is of course common with pretty much every shield build, just because it gives you that armor tier, that skill tier, and all those bonuses that come along with building stacks. And of course now you're going to see a lot of catharsis builds, because this just, saves you your talents on your backpack or your chest piece, and it gives you this healing buff. So you can get this 5% regen over 10 seconds. Very nice for, a mask slot that doesn't really provide too much else. But then of course, once you break that down, once you get past those 3 choices, which one you want, you're really going to, get into the territory of, okay, for backpack, what do I want? Do I want a Foundry Bulwark, which can give me the, increased repair speed from 15 seconds to 10 seconds. Of course, that's a nice backpack to have, gives you more repair over time, and especially just gives you quicker repair. And then really your only other choice is a high-end Adrenaline Rush backpack. Now, it could be an Armor Regen one like my Golan, or it could probably be just the named one with perfect Adrenaline Rush. And then from there, it gets even more cookie cutter, right? You've got the choice of Armor Regen, so you could use Bellstone, another Golan, the named Murakami knee pads, the Emperor's Guard, and that's basically just going to be building an armor regen build just with a Deflector shield, right? You could of course continue on to a 4-piece Foundry Bulwark. Of course, the chest piece is pretty much going to be mandatory, because there's really not too many talents that work well in this kind of build for providing you sustainable health or sustainable armor. This one's probably just the best piece. And of course, then the third choice is basically just being, chill out mask with improvised pieces. And this is always just to provide that protection from elites, which again, we can see pretty much everything, especially in legendary, is going to be protection from elites. And pretty much those are the only choices you've got. You've got improvised, you've got Foundry Bulwark, and you've got armor regen builds. That's really the simplest, most broken down way you can explain it. Now, of course, you could get a little bit more diversity in terms of what your actual stat roll is on your gear pieces, but again, you're going to see a lot of armor regen. Some builds might use explosive resistance on legendaries, because, that can come in handy. I'm not going to lie, on legendary, I do like a bit of explosive resistance. And then you're going to occasionally see some people rolling repair skills for their Artificer, or skill damage in case they've got, enough of everything else. Maybe they just want some skill damage for that shield to be a little bit more powerful. But really, again, you're going to see armor regen, explosive resistance, protection from elites. I mean, this is the basic stuff that you're going to see over and over and over again. Doesn't matter what build you use, right? You're going to see the same cookie cutter style over and over again. And that's why I don't really touch this build. That's why I don't really touch the shield, because on more difficult content, which is what people run, you're going to get squish squashed if you don't do this. And that sucks. That's why I don't really like this, style so much. And even then, even if you have the exact rolls right or the exact styles right, if you are forgetting that protection from elites, there's really no saving you. And I mean, even with protection from elites, you can still take a crap ton of damage past the shield. So I mean, you really need to invest into like 50+% protection from elites. If you don't have that, you're pretty much doomed. I mean, it's the truth. And if you don't have explosive resistance, the red and purples are gonna frick you up. There's a lot of problems here. And if you're looking for like a legendary build, yeah, you've got that cookie cutter, protection from elites, explosive resistance, and maybe you want to try to be different with some skill damage or repair skills, when you can squeeze it in there. But generally speaking, it's going to be armor regen. I mean, it's a very sad state of affairs when you use this build, because there really isn't much choice. There really isn't much diversity. Now, we can all pretend like, oh, I'm using this because I want to be unique. But again, there isn't, right? There's very limited selection in terms of how to use this build. Again, when you're using the Bulwark shield, you can go with a lot of weapon damage. You can go in a bunch of different directions to make that build unique, especially with, like headshot damage and stuff like that. There's a lot of things to go with. And of course, with the Crusader shield, just the amount of selection in terms of weapons and other stats and stuff like that, like I've already showed you guys this past week, there's a lot of variety there with the Crusader shield. With the Deflector shield, you're looking at the same 3 cookie cutter builds. And now look, those options are fun. Like you can get some good mileage out of them if you've never used a shield build and you just want something unique and different, then by all means, go ahead, give it a try, see what you can do with it. If, however, you're more like me, where you're just kind of building things just to see what you can actually get out of a set, what you can actually get out of a build, building for the fun of it, this really is probably one of the shields that you'll avoid, because it is so limiting. I mean, there's not really too much you can do here to make it better versus certain enemies. And that is really the crux of the shield in general. So if you are looking for build diversity, you're not really going to find it in the Deflector shield. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.